A few weeks ago, I was watching a clip from a political event in Tokyo that felt more like a rock concert than a government briefing. Japan's first female prime minister, Sane Takeuchi, stood before a cheering crowd and did something unthinkable for a traditional Japanese leader. She leaned into the microphone and shouted a line straight out of the anime Attack on Titan. "Just shut up and put all your money on me." The audience erupted. To the public, she is our Sane, the relatable leader who jokes about messy DIY haircuts, complains about Amazon packages piling up at her door, and carries the same cheap ballpoint pens as any office worker. Her approval ratings have hit a staggering 75%, a honeymoon phase that has outlasted almost all of her predecessors. In the eyes of the voters, she is the Iron Lady who stands tall against China's rare earth sanctions and speaks boldly about defending Taiwan. But if you pan the camera away from the cheering crowds and toward the inner sanctums of the Liberal Democratic Party, the mood shifts instantly. There, the atmosphere is cold, almost surgical. To the political princes, the men born into the legendary Ei, Aso, and Kishida dynasties, Takeuchi is an anomaly. She is a commoner without a political bloodline, a lone wolf who borrowed the party's platform but refuses to follow its scripts. The paradox is jarring. She's the most popular leader Japan has seen in decades, yet she is arguably the most isolated person in her own building. Her allies in the Innovation Party are already distancing themselves, and the party elders are quietly sharpening their knives, waiting for her high-stakes gamble to fail. She has just dissolved the Diet, calling for a snap election that feels less like a strategy and more like a desperate all-or-nothing bet. It raises a haunting question. Can a commoner prime minister actually survive the crushing weight of Japan's ancient factional politics? Or is her 75% approval rating just a beautiful, fleeting illusion before the dynasty strikes back? That distinction, the roaring crowd versus the silent sharpening knives in the party headquarters, that really sets the stage for our analysis today.
It really does.
We are looking at a political landscape in Japan that is, it's arguably more volatile than it has been in half a century.
Easily, yeah.
You've got this populist outsider, prime minister, clashing with the entrenched hereditary machinery of her own party.
Her own party, that's the key.
Exactly. And all of this is happening while a massive geopolitical crisis is brewing in East Asia. It's a perfect storm.
It is an incredibly precarious situation. And I think what we need to validate right up front is just the sheer scale of the stakes here.
Right.
This isn't just about whether Takeuchi wins an election or, passes a budget. This is a stress test for the entire Japanese political system.
The whole thing.
The whole thing. We're asking whether a meritocratic leader, someone who got there on, sheer will and popularity, can actually govern a system that was built quite literally for dynasties.
A system designed to keep people like her out.
Precisely. And then on the international stage, her high-risk, high-reward foreign policy is either going to secure Japan's sovereignty for the next 50 years or
isolate it completely.
Exactly. The downside is catastrophic.
Okay, so to help us navigate this, we have pulled together a pretty serious stack of deep dive materials for today. We're looking at sociopolitical analyses of the Liberal Democratic Party, the LDP, and we're focusing specifically on this idea of hereditary succession.
The dynasty problem.
The dynasty problem. Then we have economic security reports detailing it's a trade war with China, particularly regarding things like rare earths and the seafood bans.
Very timely stuff.
And finally, we have on-the-ground reporting on Takeuchi's persona and the internal rebellion she is facing from within the LDP.
So it's a fascinating mix of hard data on political dynasties and then this very immediate, very tense geopolitical reporting.
A lot to unpack. So let's get right into the heart of the internal conflict. This is the battle between the outsider and the dynasty. To kind of set the mood for this, I want to share a perspective that really highlights what it feels like on the ground inside the party. I heard a story recently about a young legislative staffer named Kenji working in a cold office in Nara. Kenji is what they call a commoner in the world of the Liberal Democratic Party, a man with no political bloodline, no second-generation shine. He spends his days drafting policy papers for a veteran MP whose only qualification was being the son of a former minister. I saw Kenji's anonymous post on a forum where he described the suffocating bloodline wall. He wrote about how Sane Takeuchi's rise feels like a lightning bolt hitting a stagnant pond. For someone like Kenji, Takeuchi isn't just a politician. She is a proof of concept that merit might actually survive the crushing weight of hereditary dynasties. Try to imagine the tension in those party meetings where the princes of the LDP look at her not as a colleague, but as an intruder who didn't wait her turn in the family queue. As a news creator who covers the shift in global power structures, I find Kenji's perspective deeply telling. From my vantage point, the gamble Takeuchi is taking with this early election is a direct assault on the Japanese caste system. While critics call her an outsider, the reality is that the LDP's reliance on political dynasties has created a leadership vacuum that she is filling with sheer willpower. My takeaway: this isn't just an election, it's a stress test for Japanese meritocracy. If she wins, she breaks the mold. If she fails, the princes will tighten their grip on the status quo for another generation. That phrase from the account, the bloodline wall, it just captures the sentiment perfectly.
It does.
It sounds so archaic, like something out of feudal history, but we're talking about a modern G7 democracy. Is that barrier really that tangible?
It is not only tangible, it's quantifiable. The data completely supports the frustration expressed in that account from Kenji.
So it's not just a feeling?
Not at all. To understand why that wall exists, you have to look at the structural mechanics of how one gets elected in the LDP. It revolves around a concept known as the Sanban.
Okay, let's break down the Sanban. I think this is absolutely essential to understanding why Takeuchi is considered such an anomaly.
It is. So Sanban literally translates to the three bands. It's think of it as the holy trinity of Japanese electioneering.
The three ingredients you need to win.
The three non-negotiable ingredients. The components are Jiban, Kanban, and Kaban.
Walk us through them. What's Jiban?
So first, Jiban. This is the ground organization or the terrain. In practice, it refers to the konkai or the local support groups.
And these aren't just like Facebook groups or email lists.
Oh, no, not at all. These are deep intergenerational networks of local business owners, community leaders, neighborhood associations, people who mobilize the vote. It's a machine.
The ground game.
The ultimate ground game. Okay, so second is Kanban.
Kanban.
Which means signboard. This is essentially name recognition, the brand. Is your family name known in this district? Does it carry weight?
And the third?
And third is Kaban, the briefcase, which is, a pretty clear euphemism for funding and the war chest you need to campaign.
So organization, fame, and money. I mean, in most democracies, a candidate has to go out and build these things from scratch.
Exactly, that's the point. But in the LDP, for a huge, huge percentage of the Diet members, these are inherited assets.
They're passed down.
They're passed down. If you're a second-generation or third-generation candidate, someone born into the Abe, Kishida, or Koizumi families, you do not build the Sanban, you inherit it.
How does that work in practice?
Well, you literally take over your father's konkai, his support organization. It's just handed to you. You paste your face over on the kanban, the signboard.
The name is already there.
The name is already there. And you inherit the fundraising network, the kaban. The briefcase is already full, so to speak.
It's essentially a feudal inheritance system disguised as a democratic election.
That's a great way to put it.
You aren't starting from zero. You're starting from the finish line of the previous generation.
That is the perfect analogy. And the statistics, they reflect that massive advantage. Hereditary candidates in the LDP have a win rate that hovers somewhere between 70 to 80%.
70 to 80%.
Yeah. They're almost impossible to unseat because that Jiban, those local ties, they often go back decades. You have politicians attending the weddings and funerals of their constituents' families for generations.
A bond that a newcomer just can't replicate.
How could you? A newcomer, a commoner like Kenji dreams of being, someone who has to build all of that from scratch. They face an uphill battle that is nearly vertical. It's almost impossible.
And this must impact the leadership structure, too, not just who gets elected.
Oh, significantly. It shapes the entire power structure of the party because hereditary lawmakers get elected at a much younger age, essentially right after their fathers retire or pass away. They accumulate seniority much faster.
And seniority is everything.
Seniority is currency in the LDP. Cabinet posts, senior party positions, committee chairmanships, they're often allocated based strictly on the number of terms you've served.
So the whole system is structurally designed to fast-track the princes into the inner circle.
While the commoners are left drafting policy papers in coal offices, just like Kenji, it's a self-perpetuating cycle of elite control.
This context makes Takeuchi's position even more stark. I mean, she is a commoner through and through.
Absolutely.
No former prime minister for a father, no faction boss for a grandfather.
Right. And that is the absolute core of her problem inside the LDP. She lacks that inherited jiben, that massive pre-built organizational machinery. This is the root of her isolation.
So how do they see her, the political princess?
They view her as a systemic error, a bug in the code. She didn't wait her turn in the family queue. She didn't pay her dues within a faction. She essentially jumped the line.
By doing what? Appealing to the public?
By appealing directly to the public through media. She is fighting an air war, using TV appearances, social media, populist rhetoric, that incredible popularity.
While the traditional LDP relies on the ground war.
The ground war of organized votes delivered by their inherited jiben. She's playing a different game, and they don't like it because it threatens their entire model of power.
But speaking of that ground war, it seems like her capability there is just crumbling beneath her feet right now. The news about Komeito leaving the coalition, that feels like a seismic shift in the political landscape.
It is the end of an era. I don't think that's an exaggeration.
26 years.
26 years, the LDP has relied on a coalition with the Komeito party to maintain power. You can't overstate how important they were.
So for people who aren't deep into Japanese politics, who is Komeito?
Komeito is the political wing of Soka Gakkai, which is a massive lay Buddhist organization. They are famous, legendary, for their mobilization power. Their get-out-the-vote operation is second to none.
They're the ultimate ground game machine.
The ultimate machine. In tight electoral districts, the Komeito voters are often the margin of victory for LDP candidates. They're the foot soldiers who knock on doors, make the calls, and ensure their members show up.
And now that alliance is shattered, Komeito has walked away.
Gone.
So she has no ground game. Why did they leave? Was it just policy differences, or was it something more?
It's a mix of policy and personality, her personality. Ideologically, Komeito is pacifist and dovish. They're very much in the center. Takeuchi is an unapologetic hawk. That was always a point of friction.
But they worked with hawkish LDP leaders before.
They did. But it goes deeper. I think the sources suggest it's about her refusal to play the traditional consensus politics. She didn't consult them enough. She pushed her agenda too aggressively. She didn't show the proper respect for the coalition partnership.
The Iron Lady persona doesn't leave much room for consensus building.
None at all. So with Komeito gone, she's lost the machine that guarantees those tight victories. She's now forced to rely on a loose cooperation with the Japan Innovation Party, or JIP.
The JIP, we've referred to them as frenemies.
That is the perfect term for them. The JIP is right-wing, populist, and reformist. Ideologically, on issues like, say, amending the Constitution or boosting defense, they are actually closer to Takeuchi than Komeito ever was.
So that sounds like a good thing for her.
On paper.
Right.
But here is the trap. They are direct competitors. They want the exact same conservative urban voters that Takeuchi appeals to. They are fishing in the exact same pond.
So they'll work with her, but they also want to replace her.
They want to cannibalize her support. So by relying on them, she's shifting the government further to the right, which pleases her base, but she is also standing on quicksand.
Because they could pull their support at any moment.
Yeah, any moment. If she fails to secure a clear majority in this snap election, the LDP elders, the dynasties, will look at the loss of Komeito and the instability with the JIP, and they will use it as the pretext to oust her.
So they're just waiting for her to fail.
They are letting her take this gamble, and if she slips even a little, they take the party back. It's a trap.
So she's walking a tightrope without a net. And while she deals with all this domestic fragility, the winds are blowing hard from Beijing. This brings us to the second pillar of our deep dive. The economic and security reality, or what is being called Sanonomics. I saw a video clip online from a small-scale electronics manufacturer in Kyushu, often called Silicon Island. The owner, a man named Mr. Sato, was talking about the Taiwan contingency. For decades, his business survived on seamless trade with the mainland, but now he feels the tectonic plate shifting. He spoke about Takeuchi's economic security policies with a mix of fear and relief. He described the Takeuchi shift, the expensive, grueling process of decoupling his supply chain from Chinese components to align with her hardline stance. He feels like a sailor watching a storm approach. He knows the hardline policy might provoke Beijing, but he's more terrified of being caught unprepared if the Taiwan Strait closes. For Mr. Sato, Takeuchi's rhetoric isn't just hawkishness. It's a survival manual for Japan that can no longer afford to be a passive bystander in its own backyard. Watching these developments from a journalistic perspective, I have to acknowledge the high stakes here. Takeuchi's hardline stance on Taiwan and economic decoupling is arguably the most aggressive shift in Japanese foreign policy since the war. While I understand the concern that this supply chain resilience might border on protectionism or even unnecessary provocation, we have to look at the reality of the geopolitical map. She is betting the Japanese economy on the idea that safety is more valuable than cheap. It's a polarizing stance that sits firmly on the right of the political spectrum, and while the diplomatic risks are massive, her supporters see it as the only way to reclaim Japanese sovereignty in a bipolar world. Safety is more valuable than cheap. I mean, that is a massive pivot for a country that built its entire post-war economic miracle on efficient global trade and cost-effective supply chains.
It's a fundamental rewrite of the national business model.
Right. We've all heard of Abenomics.
Yeah.
How is Sanonomics different? Is it just a sequel, Abenomics 2.0?
It's less of a sequel and more of a genre shift.
A genre shift. I like that.
Abenomics was primarily about monetary policy. It was the three arrows. But the biggest one was using the central bank to print money, lower interest rates, and fight deflation. It was a financial strategy.
And Sanonomics.
Sanonomics is structurally different. It's what the analysts we're reading are calling crisis management investment. It's a shift toward aggressive fiscal policy. That's government spending, but it's targeted at very specific security sectors.
So it's not just traditional infrastructure spending, roads and bridges and things like that?
No, this is highly, highly targeted. The money is flowing into semiconductors, AI, biotechnology, and, of course, defense.
The military-industrial complex.
Some economists are calling it military Keynesianism.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means she is using the national goal of reaching 2% of GDP in defense spending to act as a broad economic stimulus. The idea is to link national security directly to economic growth.
And for business owners like Mr. Sato in the story, this manifests as the Takeuchi shift.
Exactly. The government is actively intervening. It's using subsidies, regulations, and incentives to force companies to decouple their supply chains from China, especially when it comes to rare earths and dual-use technologies.
So the state is telling the market where it can and can't do business.
The state is telling the market you cannot trade freely if it compromises national security. It's a complete reversal of decades of policy.
That sounds incredibly expensive. I mean, reshoring supply chains, building new factories.
Yeah.
And if I'm an investor, I'm looking at Japan's massive debt mountain and getting very nervous.
The markets are definitely nervous, there's no question. We've seen signs of what they call a triple dip.
Triple dip.
Yeah, it's when stocks are falling, bonds are selling off, and the yen is weakening all at the same time. It's a sign of a major loss of confidence.
And the bond selling off is the real danger.
Right. That's the nightmare scenario for a central bank. When bonds sell off, it drives interest rates up, which makes servicing Japan's massive debt, which is over 250% of GDP, much, much more expensive.
So the markets are looking at her plan to issue massive amounts of new government bonds to fund this crisis management investment. And they're asking. Does
Japan actually have the fiscal runway for this? Can the country afford this gamble?
But Takeuchi's argument seems to be that the cost of not doing it is even higher.
Exactly.
Specifically because of the Taiwan situation. We know she's a hawk, but just how far does that hawkishness actually go?
It goes further than any prime minister in recent history. It's not just rhetoric. She made a statement in the Diet that practically rewrote the region's security ambiguity.
What did she say?
She said that if China uses force against Taiwan, it would undoubtedly constitute a situation threatening Japan's existence.
Okay, that sounds like standard tough talk to the layman, but in the context of Japanese law, those specific words are triggers, aren't they?
They are precise legal triggers. They're not just words. In Japan's security legislation, a situation threatening Japan's existence is the specific legal condition that allows the self-defense forces to exercise the right of collective self-defense.
Which means?
It implies direct military intervention alongside the United States. She is essentially drawing a red line and saying, if you touch Taiwan, Japan will not just watch from the sidelines. Japan will get involved militarily.
That is a huge departure from the strategic ambiguity of the past.
It shatters it.
And China. I assume they didn't just issue a standard diplomatic complaint.
It was vitriolic. The response was way outside the bounds of normal diplomacy. The Chinese consul general in Osaka, Xu Zhan, he posted a comment that was incredibly graphic and undiplomatic.
I remember reading about this.
He warned that if Japan sticks its head into the conflict, they will chop off the filthy neck.
Chop off the filthy neck. That is a long way from diplomatic pleasantries. It's a street threat.
It is a direct threat. And it's not just words. They are following it up with economic coercion,
Right.
hard power. China has suspended all seafood imports, which is a massive blow to coastal economies in places like Hokkaido and Tohoku.
The fishing industry.
Devastated. They've also restricted rare earth exports again, squeezing the high-tech sector that Mr. Sato is a part of, and they are curbing tourism to Japan.
This is exactly the storm that Mr. Sato was fearing. His worst-case scenario is happening.
It is.
So how is Japan actually handling that pressure? Is the economy buckling under this?
You know, surprisingly, there is a resilience strategy that seems to be kicking in. It's not a total collapse. Take tourism, for example.
Yeah.
Chinese tourism has absolutely tanked, yes. But overall, tourism revenue in Japan is actually up.
How is that possible? How do you lose your biggest customer and make more money?
It's two things: diversification and currency arbitrage. The weak yen makes Japan an incredible bargain for visitors from the US, Taiwan, South Korea, and Hong Kong.
So other tourists are filling the gap.
And then some. We're seeing a surge from those regions that more than offsets the Chinese drop. It's the same story with seafood. The industry is scrambling, but it's pivoting to ASEAN nations and the US markets.
So Takeuchi is betting that Japan can survive this economic coercion by diversifying its alliances.
That's the bet. But for the individual business owners who are caught in the transition, you know, the Mr. Satos of Japan, this is an incredibly terrifying period.
Of course.
She is playing a game of chicken with a superpower, using the Japanese economy as the wager. It's a monumental gamble.
It's a high-stakes gamble, and yet, despite the economic fears, despite the filthy neck threats from Beijing, her approval rating is sitting at 75%.
It's astonishing.
Why? What is it about her that connects so powerfully with the public? This brings us to part 3, the Iron Lady and the Populist Paradox. Try to imagine an elderly woman named Emi living in a quiet Tokyo suburb. Emi spent 40 years working for a major trading house where she was never allowed to rise above the level of section chief because she didn't fit the image of leadership in a male-dominated bureaucracy. I saw an interview with someone like Emi who explained why she follows Takeuchi so closely. She doesn't necessarily love the nationalist rhetoric, but she is captivated by the Iron Lady persona. She sees Takeuchi using that persona as a battering ram to smash through the patriarchal norms that sidelined women like Emi for decades. To Emi, Takeuchi's refusal to be soft or consensual, the traits usually demanded of Japanese women, is a form of quiet revolution. Takeuchi uses the populist label not just to win votes, but to bypass the old men in smoke-filled rooms who have always said not yet to female leadership. As a YouTuber analyzing these sociological shifts, I find this Iron Lady persona to be a fascinating, if complex, tool. It's a classic populist strategy. Project a singular, uncompromising strength to bypass traditional institutions. From a progressive standpoint, one might worry that she's reinforcing strongman politics rather than dismantling the system itself. However, when you look at the sheer density of the patriarchal barriers in Japanese governance, you start to realize why such an extreme persona is necessary. She isn't just playing a character, she is wearing armor. While her political leanings might be traditionalist, her method of reaching power is nothing short of radical for the Japanese political landscape, wearing armor. That is a really powerful image.
It is.
We talked in the intro about her relatability, our Salai. The messy hair, the cheap pens, the Amazon boxes piling up. It feels so calculated, doesn't it?
Oh, it's a masterclass in political branding. Every piece of it is intentional. She positions herself as the working class contrast to those political princes.
The ones in the perfect suits.
Right. She wants to show that she's busy, she's real, she's not polished, like the elite men who have had staff handling their logistics their whole lives. She's one of us.
And she taps into pop culture so brilliantly. That Attack on Titan quote, "Just shut up and put all your money on me." That wasn't an accident.
Not a chance. It's designed to resonate with the younger generation that is just bored to tears by scripted politicians reading off teleprompters.
Yeah.
It's authentic, it's punchy, it's memorable.
But there's a massive contradiction here, isn't there? I mean, she is the first female prime minister. She's smashed the ultimate glass ceiling. Emi, in our story, sees her as a revolutionary.
Oshiro, even.
But her policies, they aren't exactly feminist, are they?
This is the central paradox of her populism. It's fascinating. She models herself openly on Margaret Thatcher. She loves the Iron Lady comparison.
She invites it.
She does. But like Thatcher, she is socially very conservative. Takeuchi opposes same-sex marriage. She fiercely opposes allowing separate surnames for married couples.
Which is a huge issue for professional women in Japan.
A massive issue for women who want to keep their professional identity in the workplace after marriage. Yeah. And on top of that, she supports male-only imperial succession.
So she's a woman in power who actively supports traditional structures that often hold other women back.
Yes. But here's the thing. For many voters like Emmy, the symbolism seems to outweigh the policy.
How so?
Simply being a strong woman who bosses around the men of the LDP, who makes the princes visibly uncomfortable is enough. That act itself is seen as revolutionary.
So it's about the performance of power.
Exactly. She is breaking what they call the bamboo ceiling, not by being a progressive feminist, but by being tougher, louder, and more aggressive than the men she's competing with.
And she certainly is aggressive about work. There was that quote that went viral, something about work-life balance.
Oh, yes. The famous quote. She said she was going to scrap my work-life balance and work and work and work and work and work.
It's exhausting just hearing it.
It actually won a Buzzword of the Year award in Japan.
Seriously?
Seriously. It's the work and work philosophy. And it splits people. On one hand, some people, especially older salarymen, admire the dedication. It signals that she's serious about the national crisis.
Noble sacrifice for the nation.
But on the other hand, it terrifies labor advocates and, frankly, families of victims of karoshi death from overwork.
Which is a real social crisis in Japan.
A huge one. Her statement signals a potential deregulation of labor hours, a return to that grueling corporate warrior culture that Japan has been trying so hard to move away from. It fits her strongman persona, sacrificing everything for the state, but it comes with a severe human cost.
So let's try to put all these pieces together. We have the outsider taking on the dynasty. We have the hawk taking on China. We have the Iron Lady taking on the patriarchy while reinforcing traditional values. And now everything comes down to this snap election.
The high-stakes gamble. The diet is dissolved, the pieces are on the board, and they're moving.
So paint the picture for us. What does the battlefield look like right now?
Well, it's a two-front war for her, maybe even a three-front war. Internally, the LDP factions, the dynasties, are just waiting. They're biding their time.
The vultures.
They're watching the polls. They're watching the economic data. If she loses seats in this election, or even if she wins, but by a very narrow margin, the princes will say she's a liability. They'll declare her populist experiment a failure.
And move to reclaim the party.
Immediately. They'll argue for a return to stability, which means a return to their control.
Okay, that's the internal threat. Yeah. What about externally?
Externally, she has this frenemy problem with the Japan Innovation Party. As we said, they're her only real allies in the coalition now that Komeito left, but they're also her direct competitors for the same conservative voter base.
So they might support her on one bill and then run attack ads against her the next day.
They absolutely could. They could turn on her at any moment to gain leverage or to position themselves as the true leaders of the conservative movement. It's an alliance of convenience, and it is incredibly fragile.
And the voters? How are they processing all this? They seem torn between loving the persona and fearing the consequences of the policy.
They are caught in a classic populist dilemma. They love our Sane, the character, the strong leader, the anime quotes, the fighter. Oh. But they fear the real-world effects, the inflation brought on by her massive spending plans, the geopolitical tension, the threats from China, the risk of actual conflict. It's a choice between an inspiring personality and a potentially terrifying reality.
But you mentioned something interesting is happening with her support base.
Yes, this is a key point from the reporting. Experts are noting the rise of a new support layer.
A new support layer.
These are voters who traditionally hate the LDP. They see the party as corrupt, old-fashioned, and out of touch. But they support Takeuchi personally.
So her brand is bigger than the party's brand.
Much bigger. She has built a cult of personality that is completely distinct from the LDP. They're not voting for the party, they're voting for her.
It's almost presidential in a parliamentary system. She's running as Sane Takeuchi, not just as the president of the LDP.
Exactly. And that is what makes the dynasty so deeply nervous. She is changing the fundamental rules of the game. If she proves you can win without them, their power is gone.
So let's try and bring this all together as we wrap up. We have Sane Takeuchi, a commoner prime minister, fighting this war on two fronts. One against the entrenched dynasties within her own party, and one against the massive geopolitical pressure from China.
And she is doing it all while wearing that Iron Lady armor, that persona. That armor is what got her here. It's what allowed her to smash through the bloodline wall and bypass the patriarchal gatekeepers.
But it's also a trap.
It is also what makes the situation so incredibly volatile. She cannot back down. She's painted herself into a corner. If she retracts her remarks on Taiwan, she destroys her strong image and her base abandons her.
And if she softens on the economy,
She looks like just another politician. And the magic is gone. She has no choice but to keep doubling down, raising the stakes every single time.
so we are left watching this high-speed political drama. But here is the thought I want to leave you with. Takeuchi's rise is often celebrated as the triumph of a commoner over the elites. But if her survival depends on concentrating power, expanding the military, and demanding the population work and work and work, are we seeing the birth of a new meritocracy? Or are we simply watching the creation of a new, harder kind of dynasty one, built not on blood, but on the sheer uncompromising will to rule?